Wow, Michael Saylor publishes a digital asset framework on how the US can lead the global digital economy and use Bitcoin to deleverage itself. So we've got a $30 trillion Bitcoin leak here, showing how Michael Saylor really wants to turn the US upside down. It's also exciting to consider whether Saylor is now in direct contact with Donald Trump, because the Bitcoin reserve strategy is about to go into the next round. Plus, we have a positive sign from the SEC, which is hinting that there will soon be kid redemptions. It's interesting to see if Michael Saylor is in direct contact with Donald Trump as the Bitcoin reserve strategy goes into the next round. We have a positive sign from the SEC, hinting there will be kid redemptions. Super bullish, and we'll look at why. Cathie Wood reiterates her $1.5 million Bitcoin price target and says Bitcoin is mathematically destined to rise. This is ultra bullish. Let's take a look at why. And in addition, Cathie Wood reiterates her $1.5 million Bitcoin price target and even says that Bitcoin is mathematically destined to rise. But first, let's take a look at what's going on with Michael Saylor and what exciting new paper or framework he has released. He says that a strategic policy for digital assets can strengthen the US dollar, neutralize national debt, and position the United States as a global leader in the digital economy of the 21st century. What a framework he has released here. He says a strategic digital asset policy can strengthen the US dollar, neutralize national debt, and position the United States as a global leader in the 21st century digital economy. Positioning the United States as a global leader in the digital economy of the 21st century by empowering millions of companies, driving growth, and creating trillions in value. Well, that's an extremely bold statement, and he even published the whole paper, which we'll take a look at in a moment. But first, it's really exciting that he's clearly laying out the blueprint for how the US can pay off its debt. And that has always been my statement, that MicroStrategy is basically the blueprint for the Bitcoin reserve strategy in the USA. There have been discussions about why Trump and Michael Saylor haven't met yet, especially as Saylor is creating a US blueprint. Saylor is interested in the US buying Bitcoin, which would boost his holdings. It's exciting that Saylor argues for a Bitcoin strategy not just to accumulate, but to neutralize national debt. $30 trillion is a huge number. But it's really, really interesting, and it's super exciting that Michael Saylor is making the case that, no, we're not just doing a Bitcoin reserve strategy to accumulate a few Bitcoins. We can actually neutralize the entire national debt. $36 trillion. That's an incredibly huge number that's almost hard to wrap your head around. But Michael Saylor is not backing down, backed off from paying back those $30 trillion. I'll be honest with you, I'm really skeptical about this because it's not like the mountain of debt is going to stop growing anytime soon. The mountains of debt just keep getting higher. Yesterday, Donald Trump announced that he wants to completely eliminate the debt ceiling so that we don't have to keep raising it automatically every few months. So now he's just saying, let's completely leverage this. Let's just get rid of it altogether. Sure, the central banks might not be signaling any drastic interest rate cuts, but the idea of creating some kind of swap, along with Elon Musk's government efficiency thing to get a handle on the debt, seems a bit far-fetched to me. But let's take a look at the paper here. It says here that the US dollar is a global reserve currency. Here it says that the growth of digital currency markets is going from $25 billion to $10 trillion, with massive demand for US Treasury bonds, meaning that the US will definitely become a leading currency again. US dollar. Then it says here that the expansion of global digital capital markets is going from $2 billion to $280 trillion. Then there are more points, and it goes on to the strategic Bitcoin reserve, building a Bitcoin reserve that creates between $16 trillion and $81 trillion in assets for the US Treasury and offers a way to pay off the national debt. So here, in the best case scenario, we could gain $81 trillion through the strategic Bitcoin reserve. We have a national debt of, well, not $81 trillion, but $36 trillion, and he probably assumes that the debt will continue to rise, maybe to $60 or $70 trillion. But if you have a value of $81 trillion, that would probably be the ultra bull case, where you buy like 4 million Bitcoins or something, which I think is pretty unrealistic. But it definitely makes it clear that this could be a way to pay off the debt in the U.S. What is important for you to take away here is not whether it will work to pay off the debt or whether it will not work to pay off the debt. What's important for you to take away is that Bitcoin is more of a focal point, and this whole situation is going to push your Bitcoin bags up. Because no matter if the US manages to pay off its debt or not, if the US buys massive amounts of Bitcoin, it will definitely drive your bags way up. Matt Eugen from Bitwise even mentioned either yesterday or the day before in an interview I caught a clip of that Bitwise, a big asset manager, said, hey, everyone is speculating about the Bitcoin price, but if a strategic Bitcoin reserve comes into play in 2021, we'll easily shoot past that in this cycle. Next year, we'll definitely break through it. And that's a statement you keep hearing. There are different asset managers making essentially two different predictions. Next year, we'll definitely break through that. Without a Bitcoin reserve, value is lower. With it, value rises. Bitcoin reserve impacts value. they lay out the base case, and without a strategic Bitcoin reserve, you're looking at somewhere between $150,000 and in the ultra bull case, even higher. Then there's always the second case with the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and that usually brings you up to around $1 million. So you can see here how relevant this strategic Bitcoin reserve is, but very importantly, even if the USA doesn't do it, then another country will. The only question left now is, when will it happen and who will announce it first? Which major country will it be? Russia, China, the US, or some other big world power? And then there's another really positive development, which might have something to do with Donald Trump, because the SEC has actually given a preliminary green light for in-kind redemptions. This means you can cash out the ETFs directly in Bitcoin. Right now, you always have to go through the fiat route, which means you can only liquidate the Bitcoin ETFs in fiat money, like dollars, euros, and so on. And if you actually had in-kind redemptions, if that were really possible, then you could, for example, you could buy 10 BlackRock ETFs, and then if you're done with the ETFs, you could actually cash them out directly to your own wallet. That would definitely push Bitcoin forward even more because it would offer more options. You could also go directly from Bitcoin to ETFs, and then back from ETFs to Bitcoin. It just opens up more options and would probably bring in more capital flow into the Bitcoin ETFs, because then investors know, hey, if I need to, I don't have to cash out in dollars. I can cash it out directly to my own wallet. And now we actually have a new statement from Cathie Wood, who is the CEO of ARK Invest, one of the most relevant asset managers in the world with a Bitcoin ETF. Check this out.
This new asset class, or this part of a new asset class, Bitcoin, is going to hit 21 million units out there. 21 million Bitcoins out there at its peak, and that's it, no more after that. Where are we at now? We're already over 19.5 million units. Institutional investors are taking Bitcoin, the first of its kind in a new asset class, more seriously. We believe it's the biggest opportunity. They need to consider allocation and supply demand. Analysis shows projections of 1 million to 1.5 million by 2030, with increased likelihood due to institutional interest. The supply-demand mechanisms for Bitcoin are brilliant, with a hard cap of 21 million, most already in circulation. When institutional players realize the scarcity, not enough for every millionaire or business, FOMO will kick in.
So she says quite clearly here that the supply and demand mechanisms for Bitcoins are absolutely brilliant, because we have an absolute limit of 21 million and most of the coins have already been distributed. And when the institutional players realize that there isn't enough Bitcoin for everyone, not for every millionaire, not for every business, and so on, that's when the absolute FOMO is going to kick in. She even mentioned later in the interview that it's almost mathematically embedded in the Bitcoin code that Bitcoin has to keep rising in US dollars. And she also says that institutional investors are becoming more serious and really paying attention to Bitcoin, doing their research. And she also says that institutional investors are becoming more serious and really paying attention to Bitcoin, doing their research. And that's why she believes that the likelihood of her bull case of 1 million to 1.5 million by 2030 is becoming more and more likely, because we have more and more signs that Bitcoin is going to explode massively upward. And it's really exciting to watch how this unfolds. By the way, if you want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link to Bitcoin down below. The absolute easiest way to buy Bitcoin in Europe. Here, you can also get a discount with the code BitcoinHotel. You can easily buy Bitcoin here, set up Bitcoin savings plans, and it's absolutely recommended for beginners. And now I actually have a really special message for you from the Santa Ana volcano, where I climbed here in El Salvador. Just bear with me, I recorded this when Bitcoin was at an all-time high. But the message is still super relevant, and it's just a matter of time before Bitcoin shoots back up to its next all-time high.
Bitcoin is at an all-time high, and we're here on the Santa Ana volcano in El Salvador, also at an all-time high on the volcano. And a lot of people just don't get it when you talk about losing your Bitcoin. I'll show you that too. Lose Bitcoin passwords, lose. You take your passwords, your 24 words engraved, then you throw them away, and just like that, your Bitcoin is gone. And I really need to explain this to a lot of beginners, because many people always wonder when I post pictures about how I lost my Bitcoin in a boating accident, lost it in the sea, lost it on the volcano, or lost it in a waterfall. And you just don't do that if you're really going to lose your Bitcoin. Of course, that's just meant as a joke, but if you just throw away your 24 words, you can basically say, okay, I no longer own any Bitcoin, and that only works with Bitcoin. Property, you can't just say, I lost my property, or I lost my bank account. You just can't do, I lost my bank account. You just can't do that. And if you, for example, let's say you have 0.1 or 1 Bitcoin, and it rises to 5, 6, or even 13 million, as Michael Saylor suggests. Those Bitcoins will be worth a lot. If you have 1 or 2 Bitcoins, that's $13 million. If people know you have Bitcoin, it's not great. That's why it's smart to occasionally post, Oops, I lost all my Bitcoin. If someone threatens you, you can say, sorry, I lost my Bitcoin. The real question is whether that's believable. Because when push comes to shove, and someone puts a gun to your head, you can just say, hey, sorry, I lost my Bitcoin. The real question is whether that's believable or not. What I recommend to you here is the TREZOR hardware wallet. Check it out, I'll put a link down below for you. You can easily store your Bitcoin. One of the easiest and best ways to manage your Bitcoins. Of course, you don't have to trust an exchange, not any stock exchange or anything like that. You also don't have to trust BlackRock with an ETF or something like that. But you can manage your Bitcoin yourself. You can write down your own 24 words, which you can then engrave into a stone like this. You don't actually put it in the stone. You just post a picture of the stone on social media and say, hey, I threw this away. Now my Bitcoin is gone. Meanwhile, your real passwords are kept safe somewhere else. So like I said, you can also get up to 10% off the purchase of a hardware wallet with the code BitcoinHotel. I'll put all the details down below. See you next time. Until then, peace out. 1000.